Israel's military wants a ceasefire in Gaza. This is what a New York Times article published on July 2nd says. But does the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu want to end the war? Are Israel's political and army leadership on the same page? The 6 current and former Israeli security officials cited in the Times report said that they want to begin a ceasefire in Gaza, even if it means keeping Hamas in power in the besieged territory for the time being. As per the report, the generals think that a truce would be the best way of freeing the roughly 120 Israelis still held, both dead and alive, in Gaza. The generals are a part of what is known collectively as the General Staff Forum, consisting of Israel's military leadership, which is formed from roughly 30 senior generals, including the military chief of staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, the commanders of the Army, Air Force and Navy, and the head of military intelligence. Soon after the report was published and gained worldwide attention, Netanyahu released a video saying this was not an option.
מתדרכים היום את הניו יורק טיימס. הם אומרים לו שישראל תהיה מוכנה לסיים את המלחמה לפני השגת כל מטרותיה. אני לא יודע מי הם אותם גורמים עלומי שם, אבל אני כאן כדי להעביר חד משמעית. זה לא יקרה. אנחנו נסיים את המלחמה רק לאחר שנשיג את כל מטרותיה, לרבות חיסול החמאס ושחרור כל חטופינו. הדרג המדיני הגדיר לצה"ל את המטרות הללו, ולצה"ל יש את כל האמצעים כדי להשיגם.
The Israel Defense Forces also responded to the report, saying it was determined to keep fighting until it achieves the goals of the war, the destruction of Hamas's military and governance capabilities, bringing back hostages and safely returning residents in the north and south to their homes. The Times report did not elaborate on whether or to what extent the Israeli generals have pushed the position on a truce before Netanyahu, who has repeatedly promised to keep fighting until total victory, while admitting that the country is running low on munitions, alleging that the United States is withholding arms from Tel Aviv. The generals think that a truce would be the best way of freeing the roughly 120 Israelis still held, both dead and alive, in Gaza by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups since October 7th. A brief one-week ceasefire between Israel and Hamas's military wing Al-Qassam brigades last year saw the successful and violence-free release of about 120 hostages in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, especially women and children, languishing in Israeli jails. Under-equipped for further fighting after Israel's longest war in decades, the generals think their forces need time to recuperate in case a land war breaks out with Hezbollah, a Lebanese armed group backed by Iran. Israel and Hezbollah have traded near daily strikes along their border over the past 9 months. However, in the past few days, the war rhetoric between Israel and Hezbollah has intensified amid the deadly conflict in Gaza, with each party threatening to launch a war against the other. The security officials told the New York Times that they believe a truce with Hamas could also make it easier to reach a deal with Hezbollah. In an interview with the Associated Press on July 2nd, the deputy leader of Hezbollah, Sheikh Naim Qassem, reiterated that the only sure path to a ceasefire on the Lebanon-Israel border is a full ceasefire in Gaza.
تهديدنا بالحرب لا يغير موقفنا. نحن من البداية قلنا أننا نساند غزة، وعادة إذا حصل حرب في أي مكان في العالم المفروض أن المعالجة تكون بانتهاء الحرب.
The third phase Qassem was referring to was Israel's plan to transition from intensive bombing of Gaza to targeted airstrikes based on intelligence amid global criticism over the high civilian death toll in Gaza during the war. The Israeli military's opinion on the ceasefire has exposed a widening rift between the country's political and army leadership when it comes to dealing with Hamas and the situation in Gaza. Last month, the spokesperson of the Israel Defense Forces, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, stressed that Hamas is an idea which cannot be eliminated.
חמאס זה רעיון. מי שחושב שאנחנו יכולים להעלים את חמאס, הוא טועה.
This statement by the military leader appeared to contradict Netanyahu's stated aim of the months-long war in Gaza, which is to eliminate Hamas irrespective of a ceasefire deal.
ההסכם הוא יהיה הסכם לפי התנאים שלנו, והתנאים שלנו הם לא לסיים את המלחמה, לצאת מעזה ולהשאיר את החמאס על כנו. אני מסרב להשאיר את החמאס על כנו.
The confusing narrative coming from within the Israeli establishment comes as the Israeli government refuses to articulate or commit to a post-war plan for Gaza. This has led several centrist political leaders who were part of the Netanyahu-led war cabinet to resign in the past month.
אנחנו עוזבים היום את ממשלת החירום. בלב כבד, אך בלב שלם.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has also issued statements voicing the deep misgivings of the wider defense establishment over the government's lack of a political strategy in Gaza. In May, Gallant said, Hamas might regain its strength as long as it maintains civilian control. Failure to create an alternative governing authority is equivalent to choosing between the two worst alternatives: Hamas rule or Israeli control of Gaza. Negotiations to secure a truce and hostages for prisoners exchange deal with Hamas have so far faltered, with Hamas demanding that any agreement includes a permanent end to the war and Netanyahu vowing to continue until Hamas's military and governing capabilities are eliminated.